In a small, tight-knit town where the sheriff was hailed as a hero, the protector of peace, and the pillar of trust, one brutal act shattered the illusion. A deputy's body was found deep in the woods, lifeless and riddled with bullets, a scene staged as a tragic ambush. But this wasn't just a senseless killing. As investigators dug deeper, they unearthed a dark and explosive secret, one that could destroy not only a career but an entire community's faith in its leader. The beloved sheriff wasn't just protecting the town, he was protecting himself. This wasn't about justice, it was about silencing the one person who could expose him. This murder wasn't random, it was calculated, desperate, and fueled by a deadly secret that he'd do anything to keep hidden. How far would someone go to bury their truth? What happens when love, power, and betrayal collide in a deadly web of lies? Before we reveal the shocking twists of this case, hit the like button and subscribe to Real True Crime Stories for more chilling tales of deception, betrayal, and murder. Sheriff Thomas Walker, 46 years old in 2019, had spent over 2 decades building his reputation as a stalwart of law and order in the small town of Cedar Ridge, Texas. A family man on the surface, he had a wife, 2 teenage children, and an unshakable bond with his community. To the public, he was a man of unyielding principles, known for his tough-on-crime stance and dedication to protecting the town he loved. But behind the scenes, Walker struggled with a secret that weighed heavily on him. Growing up in a deeply conservative environment, he learned early on to suppress any feelings that didn't align with societal expectations. Over the years, this repression became a shadow that followed him, growing darker as he climbed the ranks to sheriff. Ryan Miller was 19 years old when he joined the Cedar Ridge Sheriff's Department in 2019. Bright-eyed and ambitious, he saw Walker as the epitome of success, a mentor who could guide him in his fledgling law enforcement career. At just 6 feet 1 inch with a boyish charm and an eagerness to prove himself, Ryan quickly became a favorite among the department and the townsfolk. Walker, recognizing Ryan's potential, took the young deputy under his wing. Their professional bond grew quickly, but so did an unspoken tension between them. Ryan admired Walker's leadership, but it was Walker's quiet vulnerability and strength that drew him closer. For the public, their relationship appeared strictly professional, with Walker as the mentor and Ryan as the promising rookie. Behind closed doors, however, the story was far more complicated. Walker, a man accustomed to control, found himself increasingly drawn to Ryan's youthful energy and admiration. For Ryan, the connection was exhilarating yet terrifying, knowing the risks they both faced if their secret ever came to light. Their affair began late one night in October 2019, during a post-shift briefing at the sheriff's office. Walker, noticing Ryan's unease after a particularly grueling day on patrol, invited him to his home for a drink. The invitation seemed innocent enough, mentorship over whiskey by the crackling fireplace. As the night wore on, their conversation turned personal. Ryan opened up about the pressures of proving himself in the field, while Walker spoke about the burdens of leadership. In a rare moment of vulnerability, their hands brushed as Walker offered reassurance. Silence hung in the air, and then, like a spark igniting a fire, their connection turned physical with a forbidden kiss. What began as a moment of weakness quickly spiraled into a full-blown affair. For Walker, it was both thrilling and terrifying, a dangerous indulgence that threatened his career, his family, and his standing in the community. For Ryan, it was intoxicating and all-consuming, but the fear of discovery loomed over them constantly. Their secret affair lasted for years, carefully hidden beneath the veil of professionalism. But as their relationship deepened, so did the risks. Walker's control began to falter as cracks in their perfect facade started to show, setting the stage for a betrayal that would shatter everything. The morning at the Cedar Ridge Sheriff's Office is quiet, almost deceptively so. Sunlight filters through the windows, casting faint shadows on the desks of deputies scattered throughout the room. The hum of office chatter fills the air, punctuated by the ringing of phones and the tapping of keyboards. But Ryan Miller, still young and new to this tight-knit community, feels like a stranger in his own skin. The weight of his secret relationship with Sheriff Thomas Walker presses down on him, an ever-present, suffocating pressure. That morning, after completing his usual rounds of paperwork, Ryan finds himself standing outside the sheriff's office. He hesitates for a moment, glancing around to ensure no one is watching. The door is slightly ajar, and, without a second thought, Ryan enters, shutting the door behind him with a soft click. The sheriff's desk, usually a sanctuary for Walker's dominance and control, is now the place of his deepest fears. Ryan sits down at the desk, his hands trembling as he powers on the computer. A mix of panic and curiosity consumes him as he types in the sheriff's password, one that Walker had carelessly shared with him a while ago. The screen flickers to life, and Ryan's heart skips a beat. Without thinking, he clicks on a video file he doesn't recognize, hoping for nothing but finding something that will change everything. As the video begins to play, Ryan's blood runs cold. The faces on the screen are unmistakable, Sheriff Walker and himself, in a private moment that had never been intended for anyone's eyes. They are captured in a vulnerable, intimate act, the rawness of the scene enough to make Ryan's stomach churn. His eyes widen in horror as the truth hits him like a slap. Frantic, Ryan slams his hand on the keyboard, trying to delete the file with trembling fingers. But in his haste, he makes a fatal mistake. The system logs every action, and as he presses delete, the file vanishes from the screen but leaves behind traces in the department's shared server. The damage is done, and Ryan can feel his life unraveling in the blink of an eye. Ryan quickly closes the computer, but the unease doesn't leave him. He knows there is no going back now. Across the room, Deputy Emily Grant, always alert, always perceptive, sits at her own desk, her sharp eyes scanning through the routine files she's reviewing. Her attention shifts when she notices something off in the system logs, anomalies in the recent activity. Files have been deleted and recovered, and Emily can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. Her instincts as a diligent investigator kick in. With a slight frown, she begins to dig deeper, navigating through the layers of the server. What she uncovers leaves her stunned. There, buried in the data, are remnants of the video file, fragments that should never have been there. The metadata tells its own story. The sheriff and Ryan. Together. Emily's breath catches in her throat as she realizes the depth of what she's stumbled upon. But she doesn't play the video. Not yet. Instead, she quietly saves the data and begins piecing together the puzzle. The sheriff's increasingly erratic behavior, Ryan's obvious discomfort, the strange closeness between them, Emily feels a nagging suspicion in the pit of her stomach. She doesn't know the full truth, but she's about to embark on a dangerous journey, one she never saw coming. The days pass in a blur, and Sheriff Walker, once a pillar of control and calm, finds himself unraveling. His sharp gaze scans the office as if every corner holds a threat. His jaw is clenched tightly, his hands balling into fists when he notices Ryan acting distant, withdrawn. Walker has always been the one in charge, but now the tables have turned. Ryan's secretive behavior sends waves of panic through him. Walker watches from his office, his eyes narrowing as Ryan walks past, avoiding eye contact. Ryan's posture is stiff, his head lowered, and for a moment, Walker wonders if it's all over. They've come so close to the edge, yet the truth remains just out of reach. Finally, in a moment of frustration, Walker calls Ryan into his office. The door clicks shut behind them, sealing them in a room that feels suddenly too small. The sheriff stands by his desk, arms crossed, the weight of his power pressing down on Ryan. The space between them is thick with tension. "What's going on with you?" Walker asks, his voice low but laced with an unmistakable edge. Ryan doesn't meet his gaze. His eyes are fixed on the floor, the weight of the secret he's carrying suffocating him. "Nothing. Just, stressed." Walker's patience snaps. "Don't lie to me, Ryan." His voice rises, crackling with authority. "I can see it. You've been acting strange. What did you do?" Ryan swallows hard, the words barely escaping his lips. I found the video, Thomas. On your computer. Walker's face goes pale, his expression hardening. For a moment, he's frozen, as though he's been struck by a blow. He steps forward, gripping Ryan by the shoulders with a force that nearly makes him stumble. What did you do with it? Walker demands, his breath hot and heavy. I deleted it, Ryan says quickly, his voice shaky. But I think traces of it are still on the network. A curse slips from Walker's lips, his fists clenching. He begins to pace, his footsteps heavy, each step filled with growing panic. Do you realize what you've done? If anyone finds that. Ryan's fear boils over. They already might have. Emily was asking about network logs today. She knows something. The sheriff freezes, the color draining from his face. His hands tremble as he grabs Ryan by the collar, pulling him closer. Listen to me, Ryan. You need to keep it together. Do not tell anyone. We'll fix this, we always fix things. Ryan pulls back, shaking his head, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Fix it? This isn't fixable, Thomas. We've gone too far. We have to end this before we both end up in ruins. The sheriff's voice drops, cold and unyielding. No. We can't end it. Not now, not ever. No one can know. Especially not Emily. Ryan stands still, the magnitude of the situation sinking in. There is no way out. Not for him, not for Walker. And Emily, who is getting closer to the truth, is about to become a part of their dangerous web. In the hallway, just beyond the door, Emily watches them through a crack, her suspicions now solidifying. She has no idea just how perilous her pursuit of the truth will become. The night air was frigid as the moon cast long, haunting shadows over the desolate clearing in the woods. Sheriff Thomas Walker, standing alone next to his car, felt an eerie calmness wash over him. The trees loomed tall, their branches swaying with the cold wind, while the rhythmic chirping of crickets was the only sound that dared disturb the silence. It was a perfect spot for what needed to be done, far enough from the town to leave no witnesses, yet close enough for him to control the narrative. He had called Deputy Ryan Miller under the pretense of investigating a disturbance, knowing full well it was a setup for something far darker. As the headlights of Ryan's patrol car pierced the night, Walker didn't flinch. He had already made up his mind, and there was no turning back now. This would be the end of everything. Ryan's car rolled to a stop just a few feet away, and he stepped out, his breath visible in the cold night air. He adjusted his flashlight and sidearm, trying to steady his nerves. His anxiety was palpable, his hands shook ever so slightly as he walked toward the sheriff. Despite the cold, a thick tension hung between them, an unspoken weight neither could shake. Walker waved him over with a curt motion, his face stern, eyes calculating. You're late, he remarked flatly, but there was an underlying edge in his voice that Ryan didn't miss. Ryan stood in front of him, but he couldn't meet his gaze, unsure whether the sheriff would calm him or reprimand him. The words Walker spoke next were chillingly deliberate. Do you really think you can keep this hidden forever? You're acting like a nervous wreck. Do you think people won't notice? Ryan's stomach twisted. I never wanted any of this, Tom, he replied, his voice tight with emotion. I told you we should have ended it months ago. It's ruining us. Walker's eyes narrowed as he took a slow step forward, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. You don't get to decide when it ends. I've done everything for you. You owe me, Ryan. There was a dark finality in his words, as if he had already made up his mind about how this would go. Ryan's heart pounded as the weight of the moment pressed down on him. Desperation seeped into his words. I found the video. The one from your computer. I was going to, he stopped himself, the confession hanging in the air between them. The sheriff's expression shifted, his cold demeanor flickering for just a second before it hardened again. He took a step back, as though considering Ryan's words. "I see your point," Walker said, his voice suddenly calm, almost soothing. He reached for Ryan's shoulder, his touch deliberate and steadying. "Let's figure this out together. We can still salvage this." For a brief, fleeting moment, Ryan allowed himself to believe the sheriff. His guard dropped just slightly, but it was a fatal mistake. Before Ryan could even comprehend what was happening, Walker's hand was no longer on his shoulder but pulling his service weapon from the holster. Ryan's heart dropped to his stomach as the sheriff leveled the gun at his chest. "Tom, don't, please," he whispered, his voice shaking with disbelief. The words seemed to hang in the air, suspended between them, but it was too late. Walker's face was impassive, emotionless, as he pulled the trigger. The sound of the gunshot cracked through the night, shattering the eerie calm. Ryan's body jerked violently as the bullet struck him in the chest, and he crumpled to the ground, gasping for air. The world around him began to blur. Blood soaked his uniform, pooling beneath him on the cold earth. The pain was unbearable, but there was no escape. Ryan tried to crawl, to escape, but his movements were slow, weakening by the second. Another shot rang out, and this time, the bullet struck him in the back. His body buckled, and the final breath he took was shallow, rattling in his chest before it ceased altogether. The forest around them was eerily quiet once more, save for the sound of his blood spilling into the dirt. Walker stood over him, his expression unchanged, as if nothing had happened. He was a man of precision, a man who understood how to cover his tracks. He quickly bent down and began to work, moving with swift, practiced motions. He grabbed Ryan's gun and fired a shot into the ground, kicking up dust and dirt. Then, he scattered items around the area, a radio, Ryan's flashlight, a few papers, to make it appear as though there had been a struggle, an ambush from an unknown assailant. He carefully arranged the scene, knowing how to manipulate the evidence to fit his narrative. Satisfied with his work, Walker took a step back, surveying the scene. His eyes lingered on the lifeless body of Ryan, a cold satisfaction washing over him. This was the price of betrayal. Reaching for his radio, Walker called in the report. "Officer down. Officer down. Deputy Ryan Miller has been ambushed. We need backup immediately." His voice was steady, controlled, as if the last few moments hadn't just been a brutal murder, but just another call to action. Once the call was made, Walker didn't hesitate. He turned and left the clearing, climbing into his patrol car. His mind was already at work, crafting his alibi. He would return to town and act like nothing had happened, knowing full well that the body would be discovered soon enough. By then, his story would be set in stone. No one would suspect him. After all, he was the sheriff, the protector of this town. And he would make sure it stayed that way, no matter the cost. Deputy Emily Grant had always been meticulous. A rookie on the force, she had quickly gained a reputation for her sharp eye and dogged determination. When Ryan Miller was found dead, the official report from Sheriff Thomas Walker seemed almost too neat. He claimed that Ryan had been ambushed during an investigation, but something in the sheriff's demeanor didn't sit right with Emily. The calm, controlled nature of his report, the lack of emotion or urgency, it all felt wrong. Emily's suspicions grew when she started reviewing the call logs. There was no record of any disturbance being reported in the area that night. No one had called in any suspicious activity, no prior alerts. How could Ryan, a seasoned deputy, have been caught in an ambush without warning? The more she thought about it, the more the story began to fall apart. Then there was the forensics. The ballistics report was damning. Ryan's gun had been fired, yes, but there was no sign of a struggle, no second shooter as Walker had claimed. The bullet trajectories didn't align with Walker's story of an ambush. Emily pored over the crime scene photos, her eyes scanning every detail, trying to find something that would explain the inconsistencies. It was clear that the sheriff's story was a lie. And then there was Walker's behavior. The sheriff, normally composed and unflappable, was acting strangely. He was avoiding Emily's questions, delegating the investigation to others, even acting evasive in ways she had never seen before. It was as though he was hiding something, and Emily knew she couldn't let this go. Driven by her growing mistrust of Walker, Emily decided to take matters into her own hands. She began a quiet investigation of her own, digging deeper into the evidence that had been conveniently swept under the rug. The department's computer logs revealed something that sent a chill down her spine. Ryan had accessed the system just hours before his death. There, in the files, was a deleted video, grainy, but unmistakable. With the help of a tech-savvy colleague, she managed to recover it. The footage was intimate and damning. There, in a cabin tucked away in the woods, were Walker and Ryan, together. The video was enough to shatter any remaining doubts Emily had. The sheriff and his deputy had been involved in a secret affair, one that had ended in murder to keep their illicit relationship hidden. Determined to piece the puzzle together, Emily went to the crime scene. She walked the path Ryan had taken, retracing his steps with the precision of someone who knew the difference between an accidental slip-up and a deliberate act. The placement of Ryan's body, the way he had fallen, didn't make sense. The trajectory of the bullets was all wrong. She noticed subtle things, the way the dirt had been disturbed in places that didn't fit with Walker's story. It was clear the sheriff had staged the scene, but why? As Emily continued to dig, the evidence kept piling up. A local hiker, who had been out in the woods that night, came forward with information. He had seen 2 patrol cars speeding toward the woods at an unusually late hour. But when the gunshots rang out, he hadn't heard them until much later. His testimony conflicted with the timeline that Walker had provided, further deepening Emily's suspicions. Armed with this evidence, Emily knew it was time to confront the sheriff. She waited for the right moment, knowing that Walker was a dangerous man, someone who could easily manipulate and deceive anyone who didn't see through his charm. One late night, she made her move. Walker was sitting behind his desk in his office when Emily entered, her footsteps firm and steady. He looked up, his expression shifting from the usual authoritative mask to something more guarded. But it was too late, Emily had already done her homework. She slid the recovered video across the desk, the grainy image of Walker and Ryan together flashing on the screen. For the first time since she had known him, Walker's face faltered. His eyes widened in shock and then narrowed in panic. He tried to dismiss the evidence, to deny it all, but Emily wasn't backing down. She laid out everything she had uncovered, the forensic inconsistencies, the witness testimony, the call logs. Her voice was steady, but the weight of the truth hung heavy in the room. "You thought no one would put it together," Emily said, her gaze unwavering. "But you underestimated me. You killed Ryan to protect yourself. Now it's over." Walker's face twisted in anger, his eyes flashing with a mix of desperation and rage. Without warning, he lunged at Emily, his large frame moving with startling speed. But Emily had been prepared for this. She sidestepped, using her training to overpower him. In seconds, she had him restrained, her grip strong as she held him down. His struggles were futile, and he soon realized that his reign of terror was finally coming to an end. Backup arrived moments later, and Walker was hauled to his feet, his hands cuffed behind his back. The sheriff, once the powerful figurehead of the town, was now nothing more than a criminal in handcuffs. The town was rocked to its core by the revelations. The sheriff, the man everyone had trusted to protect them, was a murderer. But it wasn't just the murder that shocked the community, it was the sheriff's secret life. The affair, the manipulation, the cover-up, it all came to light, turning the town's trust in Walker into a dark memory. As the media descended on the town, the story quickly turned into a national scandal. The sheriff's betrayal, both personal and professional, became fodder for headlines, and the town was forced to come to terms with the truth. But it wasn't over yet. The trial was a spectacle, a courtroom drama that captured the attention of the nation. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture of a man willing to kill to protect his secrets. Walker's defense, desperate to salvage his reputation, tried to frame the murder as a crime of passion. But the evidence, the text threads, the ballistics, the surveillance footage, was overwhelming. The truth couldn't be denied. In the end, Walker was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power. His once promising career was destroyed in a matter of days. And as he sat in the defendant's chair, awaiting his fate, it was clear that there was no escape from the web of lies he had woven. Justice, as cold and unyielding as the forest that had once been his refuge, was finally served. Sheriff Thomas Walker's desperate bid to keep his secret ended in tragedy for both him and Deputy Ryan Miller. This case serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of fear, shame, and betrayal. The dark corners of a small town were forever changed by the actions of a man entrusted with power, a man who allowed his desires and guilt to drive him to murder in an attempt to cover up his own truth. But in the end, the lies unraveled, and the consequences were inescapable. The story of Ryan Miller's death is not just a tale of betrayal, but a chilling portrait of how the unchecked pursuit of self-preservation can destroy lives, rip apart communities, and ultimately consume even those who think they are above the law. Do you believe Walker's actions were fueled by his fear of exposure, or was it a calculated attempt to maintain his power at any cost? How can society foster acceptance to prevent such tragedies? If this story shocked you, like and subscribe to Real True Crime Stories for more gripping cases of love, lies, and murder. And don't forget to hit the notification bell for daily updates, so you never miss a chilling tale from the world of true crime.